brand new kit. Looks really nice. Quite a superb looking vehicle. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies, and today I'm going to be looking at this brand new kit from Tamiya. It's the M18 Hellcat. It's a tank destroyer from the US forces in World War II, and it's in 1/35 scale. So this is a particular tank destroyer of the American design. The German tank destroyers of the time tend to be larger and heavier, and well, larger was the operative word because they always wanted to put bigger guns on them. So they ended up with the hunting tiger, which tended to have the massive gun which could penetrate all types of armor. Now the Americans wanted a tank destroyer the other way. They wanted a reasonable amount of penetration with a decent sized gun. It's not the hugest gun, so it kept the weight down. So this is the same gun which is in the Sherman, but they did opt for a very lightly armored chassis, which made it much faster. And this was one of the fastest tanks of the period when driving on road. So this could achieve about 80 kilometers an hour. The whole idea behind all of this was to move very quickly so they could outflank the Germans, and they did that very well. So they started with these from 1943, and this was used all the way throughout World War II and also used in the Korean War as well. Okay, so let's have a look inside of this particular kit and see what's inside. All right, now with the box art, you see the box art is very, very nice. Like always, Tamiya is famous for their box art. It gives a really good impression of the tank itself and inspiration on how to paint it as you're building the model. Okay, so as we open it up, on this side you've got some different angles. Okay, side view, front, rear view. And then on this side, so the top view, and then a really nice figure is included as well for the commander holding onto a map. Now the latest Tamiya figures are exceptional. Tamiya figures have always been very good, but what they've done with some of their later figures is they've used 3D scanning technology. So it gives a much natural pose and also draping of the clothing. All right, so let's have a look inside the kit. All right, so kit full of parts, quite a thick box. So there's multiple sprues in there. Let me just pop this aside and we'll start having a look at them. All right, so all the parts are molded in a khaki type, a browny green. This particular section here has most of the turret components. So you see lower here, this is the turret where it attaches to the ring onto the hull. Got the sides of the turret ring there itself. There's a figure. So you can see the figure is actually, the torso is in two pieces, with all the earlier figures are normally in one. This helps to get the draping on the clothing really nice too, because you can angle these differently to if you had them in a single piece. So that helps with the molding technologies here. The draping on the cloth cover for the gun is also incredibly well done. And they've done that in multiple pieces, so you can get it all molded all the way underneath. So it's really nicely detailed. Got sections of the gun here. This here is some ammo cases, so these are all inside the turret. Great thing about this particular tank too is with the American tank destroyers, they actually had open top turrets, which wasn't a favorite with the crew because it got very, very cold during winter. But it did allow them very good visibility, which is a plus because they needed to see exactly what was happening outside. They just had to be very careful when they were poking their heads out. The other great thing is because when you're building a kit, because the area is so open, you'll be able to see a lot of details. And so they have to pack a lot of detail inside the inside of the turret and then also in the fighting compartment, which is just below the turret. Okay, so you've got the breech guards here. The turret ring, or I should say there's the machine gun ring for the 50 cal, and you've got the parts of the gun mount here, and there's some really nice tread plating detail. Not sure if you've got to see that. It's just very, very fine on certain surfaces within here. Okay, and you will notice that with the sprue, you see there's different angles here. So when you've got parts like this, is generally a bit of slide molding involved. So here, with the gun itself, you have the barrel, and with the slide molding, it's actually molded the inside hole. Makes a big difference when you've got the hole accurate. No need to re-drill or finish it off to make sure it's concentric. So slide molding is used quite often. So there's more slide molding here. This is to get the the ridges in the side of the fabric cover for the gun. And like always, as you can see how clean it is, I mean, to me molding, there's no flash whatsoever. Absolutely clean. All right, let's move on to the next part. All right, so here we have a lot more of the finer components. Okay, so you've got seats for the crew. There's some spare track links. Certain areas here which I think are parts of the, they'll be parts of the gun. Okay, traverse mechanisms. You've got clean gun cleaning rods, basic tools, sledgehammer, shovel, some cranks and such. And then there's some really fine rails here, which will be for holding stowage. Lots of small components. Just see the mesh here. So the mesh is quite fine. So I don't think there's really any need for photo etch mesh. Don't think a photo etch mesh is going to improve upon that much. And then certain areas here, these look like mud flaps for the fenders. Looks like there's a bit of a bogey there as well for the suspension. Okay. Over here we've got the main sections of the top of the hull. You can see how the shape is quite unique. Now with this particular tank, it was designed for easy maintenance as well. So on the back of the hull, it's actually designed so that the back would fold down and the engine could be disconnected and pulled out on rollers, and the same with the transmission. So speed of maintenance was very important. You don't want to be slowed down and then get ambushed yourself. So very large components. That's the inside of the fighting compartment, which is in the base. So you can imagine just inside here, there's also detail that you'll be able to see through here. And this is where these form parts of a bulkhead inside, so you can see all the detail on the insides. Okay, so that's the top of the hull. Okay, from here we move to the base of the hull. Okay, so multi-piece. These are quite common to do multi-piece these days. One piece used to be popular because it made construction easier, but having multiple pieces gives much more detail. So it makes sense to have the horizontal parts molded separately, so they have very clean detail here rather than trying to mold it in this way. Okay, and so sides of the sponsons there as well. Okay, really nice. All right, so that's the base. All right, I've got some smaller bits here. So inside this bag's actually got clear parts. There's some goggles there as well. So goggles just need the frames painted in. Let's see how close you can get there. Then underneath this little sprue here is actually the 50 cal machine gun. So that's quite often seen in some other brands, like AFV Club have done that as well. It makes sense to do this because 50 cal machine guns are actually used on all different vehicles. So if there's any new tanks, I guess, that Tamiya are going to make or update, it's quite easy to just add this in there and it'll be a very good machine gun. So they spent extra time doing this. There's a few ammo boxes there as well. And then this glass section has also got the bulletproof or armored glass, which is around the I guess it's the driver's compartment and also the commander's cupola. Although there's not much of a cupola because it's all open topped. All right, from there we've got this last bag, which has actually got 2 sprues in it, which are identical. Simply because this has got all the running gear. You've got the road wheels, the drive sprockets. The drive sprockets are multi-piece, so there's heaps of detail there. And then you have the tracks. So the tracks are a multi-piece link system. Not individual link, although there are some individual links here. So individual links are used for showing the curves, and then the flat sections for the base and for the top. So it makes construction a lot easier. It's pretty much a standard nowadays to do that with these kits, because if you do want individual links to get the sag look from the top, then there's plenty of aftermarket companies that do that. All right, so we've got bogies here for the suspension. The individual links, as I mentioned earlier. Some of the shock absorber covers. These I'm not too sure. I think this is actually ammunition. So these are ammunition racks which go on the inside of the hull. A little bit of thread there to replicate the towing cable. Very small hooks. There's headlight guards there as well. As I spin this around, you can see that's identical. It's the same thing again. Okay, so that's all the plastic parts. From there we get some really nice decals. The decals are very bright. Got the big stars. And quite a few serial numbers there as well. You can just see the white stars there on the top. Okay, all right, so then we got our manual. And also we've got this, which has got a bit of the background information. So this is a nice little booklet. Comes in multiple languages, and you've got all the colors there. It also acts as the decal guide. Okay, there's some more detail on the tank itself. Okay, so let's pop this back. Have a look at the manual now. Okay, pretty traditional Tamiya manual. You've got the box art across the front here. Paint chart, which obviously uses Tamiya paint colors, and the basic tool guide. Okay, so from here we've got the different options. Now you need to pay attention here because there will be some slight differences between these two. So it's up to you to choose first, and then as you build, they'll show an option which will say A or B throughout the instruction manual. Okay, so you start off with the base of the hull, putting together all the fighting compartment within the hull. Sides of the hull go together, and then you start adding in the suspension. You got your shock bump stops. There's the rear panel for the engine. This is the part that folds down so that it can be pulled out on rollers. So that's both sides, and you can already see how many of these parts which are the same on both sides. Okay, the bogies are going on. More suspension components, and then you have your idler wheels across the top. You've got your the road wheels going in. Some finer details across the back here, some hooks. And then there's the sprocket, as you can see, multi-piece. Okay, so there's 4 pieces and a polycap. Polycap is quite common within Tamiya tanks. Makes it a lot easier to assemble just by pressing on the polycap. But you will notice that the road wheels don't use polycaps and actually attach to the bogies by gluing in. Now I've noticed that one of these new features with Tamiya kits, it was also on the F4 Phantom, is any of these shafts, usually they'll be straight cylindrical shafts. These are actually tapered, so to actually push it in, this taper will match the taper within the inside of the wheel, and you don't have any problems with alignment. Okay, this is where we're doing the tracks. As you can see, the tracks are the multi-piece, sort of semi-easy, but also the individual links there give it that extra detail, so it doesn't look like a bent bit of rubber. Okay, so here is indicating which particular parts or which tracks go where. So you've got the big long section here across the top, the shorter one on the bottom, then you've got the individual ones around the sides here, and the shorter sections across the back and the front. All right, so here's the ammo which was in the sponsons. So it's on both sides of the sponsons. And then we start building up, this is the mud flaps we saw earlier, and you'll see how the sponsons, or bases of the mud flaps, go onto the top of the hull. There's certain areas you just have to pay attention to trim off, so from the molding process. Okay, from there, there's the top of the hull. This is the grilled sections which I showed you before, which are really finely molded. They're just the engine covers. You have the back here with your brake lights, tools going on board as well. More tools across the top of the hull. Got the decal in place before certain things are placed over the top. And then we move into the front end. So you've got the driver's compartment and the radio operator's compartment. Got the hatches there. So obviously the hatches are split in two. You can have them open or closed. It's up to you. Headlights. There's the headlight covers. And then you're mating the top of the hull to the base of the hull. You've got the, that's the transmission cover. So you notice how all these are all separate parts. You don't actually get a transmission inside, but I'm sure that a third party company will be making parts like that so you can leave all these covers off. Okay, then we start building the hull. So this is the base for the hull ring with the, not the hull ring, the turret ring. That's the motor for driving the turret. Looks like you got some sort of boxes or perhaps a radio placed in there. Sides of the turret with all the paraphernalia, spare parts, ammo for their machine guns and such. decal placement for the side of the turret. The turret ring, which is the commander's cupola area, I guess. There's not actually a cupola in there. You got the cover on the back for your stowage. There's some more ammo. These are all loaded up and then mounted on the back of the turret. Part of the gun going together. All the way here to the mantlet, and then that's all joined together. Gun mounted onto the turret. You have all these hooks which are mounted on the side of the turret. This is where they used to hang all their stowage or helmets and other things. And then this is the construction of the cover that I showed you earlier. So fabric covers are notoriously difficult to mold properly. Quite often they're molded a bit too soft and they don't have a lot of detail. But as you can see, there's multiple pieces just to get all the detail right. And here's you see where you've got the options for the sight. You can have that open or closed. Okay, so there's a barrel going in place. This is the, I guess, the fighting compartment of the turret, which is the base of the turret. So that's got all the seats, the crew seats going into place, the traverse mechanism, and then that is glued onto the base of the turret. And the turret is slipped on the hull. And as you can see, it's got the bayonet mount, which is a pretty standard. 2 fittings inside, and then you rotate it and it gets locked into place. And then final decal placement on the back end. You've got the machine gun mount. There's a 50 cal machine gun, which we saw on that small sprue earlier. Ammo. You've got your antenna mounted there. Spare track. Your tow hook cable, and then the figurine. So there's the map itself. So you can actually cut that out, paint it a bit, and you can fold that up and use that as a map that's being held. And then some spare ammo. And that can be put anywhere you like, really. And that's it. Okay, so that is my open boxing of the Tamiya 1/35 scale M18 Hellcat by Tamiya. Brand new kit, looks really nice, and quite a superb looking vehicle. So there you go.